All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are. It's Yankee Tea News again with the Greenwich Stanford Tea Party Patriots, and we're on session number 35, Monday, January 3rd, 2022, the year of our Lord. So I'm going to try and cover a fair number of areas quickly here. And top of the list is a gentleman named Steve Kirsch, who you may or may not remember. His claim to fame was he was on the FDA advisory panel back in August, said that his research showed that for every two lives lost, one was saved by the vaccine. So that was a message that he sent to the panel and to the FDA, and they really didn't respond very much. And since then, there's been other research that's pretty much along the same lines. And then the event, so that's Mr. Kirsch, and he just came out with a piece on his Substack where he's advising people, and I'm calling this a call to action to you, to pressure all the medical boards in the state to leave doctors alone. Do not go after them for their independent judgment and thinking. If you do, we're going to make your lives very unpleasant. So to Mr. Kirsch's credit, the article goes through this in substantial detail, but his message is clear. If we're going to have any chance of fixing this mess, they're going to have to back off and let doctors and nurses do what they do best, rather than exercise all this bizarre regulatory tyranny. So that's that one. Now the next one is, yes, Biden kills the truth.
Is that?
Yes. So Dr. Malone reported on this, and they found that Biden, our fake illegitimate president, had spoken with Prime Minister Modi in India and told him to cover up the information concerning the benefits of ivermectin as reported for the state of Uttar Pradesh. That's right, told him to deep six the information. And it's really just, it's disgusting to put it mildly. So, but the link is up, you can read more about it. Then the next thing is, okay, McConnell helping Pfizer. I mean, next week I hope to do a little bit, I want to start doing some excerpts from Robert Kennedy's book, The Real Anthony Fauci. I can't get 2 paragraphs without coming to something that just makes me go, oh my God, I cannot believe this. So I feel a responsibility for people who haven't gotten the book and haven't read this to at least know a little bit. Okay, so we're going to be talking about it. Now, in this case, McConnell has appointed a lobbyist to help fight a bill in Congress concerning Pfizer. I think it's called the False Acts Bill, and the whole thing is phony from beginning to end. But we know that what Pfizer does is it tries to fight every attempt to make them liable for anything they do. So this latest bill seeks to hold them liable for their actions, and they're fighting it tooth and nail, and that's right, McConnell is helping Pfizer. It's disgusting. Then, yes, do Tyrant Lamont's COVID policies work? Okay, so this is actually an article that came out, and the link is up for this as well. The problem is this, in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen. Normally, a properly functioning government, any properly functioning organization where you have policies, you have plans, you have budgets, and you issue guidance, and people carry them out, you want to know if you're doing the right thing. Are you having a positive impact, or are you having a negative impact? Now, as a quick aside, with respect to the state of Connecticut and public education alone, there was over 75 unfunded mandates just for public education. Guess what? the government of Connecticut does not have a single mechanism for review and audit of the decisions that they make. They make the decision, they throw it out there, and they don't care who gets hurt. That's right. Tyrant Lamont does not care who gets hurt with his policies because they don't have a mechanism in place for evaluating the impact of their policies. More discussed. All right, so that's the setup. Guess what? In light of some of the other things we're about to say, it should be very clear that his policies are, quote, not working. And part of the reason they're not working is they don't even bother to check if they're working or not. How stupid is that? But, oh, that's right, I have to tell you, we do have a campaign titled Tyrants Do Stupid Things. And this would be one of them, because he is a tyrant. He still operates under so-called emergency powers, which are illegal and unconstitutional, and gets away with it, unless we stand up and fight back. Okay, just further evidence that Lamont's doing a crappy job. Connecticut is in the top 5 for people who are fleeing the state. New Jersey happens to be number 1, but we're number 4 on the list. And it's something like 60%. I forgot how they arranged the numbers, but it's something like 60% of X are people leaving the state. Now, it's worth noting that in surveys done in the past, where as many as half of the people living in Connecticut said if they had their druthers, they would leave. They would leave, okay? And this reflects that. His non-policies, his mismanagement, his tyrannical approach. Should it be a surprise people are leaving? You know, part of it is when we look at what red states are doing versus blue states like Connecticut, it's a positive embarrassment, an absolute embarrassment. Anyway, Connecticut hits a positivity of 21.5%. Now here the problem is, if you're following this, there's been a lot of talk about what they call the Omicron variant, the mildest one yet, right, which also has the capacity to spread more quickly than any other throughout the population. So should we be surprised at a positivity rate of 21.5%? Frankly, no. But since we have a compliant media that engages in fear porn at every turn, they try to make a big deal out of this. Technically, this is a good thing. A high positivity rate, that means that people are developing a natural immunity, even if they've already been vaccinated, and that gets in a whole other story. Even if they've been vaccinated, at least they're developing natural immunity with the Omicron virus. So that's a good thing. Commie of the week, Jim Himes. Oh my goodness. Okay, the funny thing about Jim Himes is, let's quickly go back in time. As a young student, he wrote a master's thesis at Harvard where he talked about, where he was doing research on the surveillance of their own citizens by the Sandinistas. And this thesis, of course, spoke glowingly of their methods for spying on their own people. Well, guess what Mr. Himes' current assignment is? He's number 2 on the Senate Select Intelligence Committee in Congress. Gee, I wonder if he learned a few things from them. Just a thought. But anyway, so again, the problem is that he has people who are connected to him in various ways. As an interesting aside, his press secretary recently resigned and joined with a guy named Warnock down in Georgia, who's also a communist. He dresses up as a pastor and pretends to be the people's people, but he's just another communist. So, you know, the acorn doesn't fall far. Debunking the debunkers. Okay, this has been an assault on Dr. Peter McCullough and his work. It should be pointed out in a recent law case, right, that Mark Zuckerberg was pushed up against the wall in terms of his use of fact checkers. And they had to admit that fact checkers were nothing more than people with opinions. So the notion that a fact checker is somehow an expert who is on par with the person that they're debunking is just not true. Okay, so that's that for background. What people are learning is these debunkers, when you take a close look at the nature of their arguments, they don't address the issues. They just wave their hands, make claims, and the claims have nothing to do with what the expert said in the first place. So it's a rotten trick, and there are other rotten tricks. Anyway, okay, press hides the truth. All right, so here very quickly has come forth the news that after 3 years, the Federal Reserve finally released the data on who received $4.5 trillion in repo funds. Now, those who remember know that there was a crisis in our financial markets that started basically in September of 2019. What had happened was the repo market is an overnight commercial paper market where banks loan each other money on a very short-term basis, 2, 3, 4, 5 days at the most. Banks can get into a crunch at various points. Well, a crisis developed in the market. Normally, the overnight rate is around 1%. Suddenly, banks are demanding from each other upwards of 10% in interest for the repo loans. As a result, the Federal Reserve had to make a number of emergency interventions. And at the end of the day, these totaled $4.5 trillion. But no one ever said who got the money for what, for how long. Well, it turns out that now, here we are, early 2022, and the Federal Reserve finally releases the information on 2019. However, the press has been running in the other direction. They don't want to talk about this at all. But we have the links up. So there's a link about the story, and the data, if you're curious enough, is now actually available. So you can download some spreadsheets, and it gives in detail the loans that the Federal Reserve made in lieu of the commercial market for repo loans. So I think it makes for interesting reading. So that's available. We have the link up for that. Now, China mines our data. It should be obvious they've been doing this all along anyway, but the article is claiming that the effort to collect even more data, especially on conservatives and other groups like us, has intensified on the part of China. And they're using Facebook and Twitter data in particular to do this. Now, there are more facets to this than I can talk about right now. So again, go to the link. But, we have a fight on our hands, ladies and gentlemen, with respect to the games that the Chinese are trying to play on us. So I'll try to do something special on this later. Just know that they're trying to get even more individual data on people. And given the amount of corruption that already exists in this country due to the communist Chinese, you can see they're going to leverage all that against ordinary citizens. All right. Last one. Fauci moves the goalposts. Again, the link is up for this as well. And Fauci is talking about, well, how should I say this? Once again, redefining what constitutes vaccination, redefining the terms and conditions for when people can do or not do certain things, blah, blah, blah. It's getting tiresome. So, there's that. Now, another special note I just wanted to bring up. Curiously, in the last few days, there's been a number of different sources all talking about the same issue, which is called mass formation psychosis. Using what happened in Germany in the 1930s as they started to go after the Jews, as an example. This illustrated how large numbers of people who would normally not pay attention to these things all suddenly started to react to each other, and there was this one large public opinion that congealed. It was like changing the culture overnight. And they began to, as you know, go after the Jews. Well, people have tried to understand the psychological basis for this on a large population basis. And that's led to this concept of mass psychosis, mass formation psychosis. Again, we have the links up. Dr. Malone has talked about this a lot, and Dr. Mercola recently put up about a 17-page piece on this, and there was somebody else who put something up. Yeah, so it's, I mean, there's the sense that America could go in the same direction if we don't wake up and pay attention. So this is why you need to learn about it. This is why you need to share it with other people. This is another call to action. All right, and then for later, one last comment is that we have yet more information showing that China's economy is imploding in various ways. Now, my reaction to this is not to get too upset, because the Chinese government, even though they're effing communists, have proven themselves to be quite adept at financial manipulation. So they'll game the system in every way a typical capitalist does. They could even outfed the Fed if they wanted to. In any event, thank you very much. Right, yes, that's right.
Also,
yes. Right.
we want
So we're going to share this as well. Let's see here if I got this right. Yes, okay. Just wanted, all right, so first of all, Jackie Homan did a great op-ed piece on not being able to wear masks. And Roger Stone retweeted her piece, which we published. So thank you, Roger, and hopefully that brings us even more viewership over time. Meantime, this brick, I don't know how well you've got it zoned in, but in June, the state legislature sought to eliminate the religious exemption for vaccines. Outside the Capitol building was a huge, huge, huge demonstration. And I can tell you, having been at many demonstrations, this was on a whole other level. All right, and also it should be interesting that our waitress talked about her sister, who just had a child a few years ago. She too is over the moon about having forced vaccinations for her child. She is angry, okay? And her anger was the same anger that you could see there all around the Capitol building with thousands of people. So the message to the legislature and to others, because we've seen this talk about camps being set up in New York State, is that you're pushing it. You are really pushing it. There are a lot of angry people out there, and I think you are out of touch, totally out of touch, and you have no clue. There's a sense that you will cross a line. And when you cross that line, you're going to have to confront this, all right? It's a brick. It's the nicest thing that can be said to you. It says no jabs, no mandates, no camps. So if you push it, expect more of these. Thank you very much.